All right, so we're going to look at post-classical. So after the high point of the West, and we're going to go into Europe. So this is going to be the Middle Ages in Europe. So the essential questions, so your short answers for your exam and your short answers for your sections. What were the main characteristics of the Byzantine Empire? How was Western Europe affected by the collapse of Rome? And how did the system of feudalism restore order to Western Europe? Last one, how did religious beliefs shape the lifestyles of this period? So post-classical part 1, we're going to look at the Byzantine Empire. So Byzantine Empire from 330 to 1453. So in 330, Emperor Constantine moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium. This is a Greek city in the eastern part of the empire. So really you're moving the whole empire out to the east. He renamed the city Constantinople after him, and the city was located along the land routes that connected Europe and Asia. So it's one of the greatest locations in the world at that time. So the city was strategically located on the Bosporus, which is a waterway connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. We've already learned that, like the Romans, if you have a sea outlet, then it's great for trading and everything else. So Constantinople was surrounded by water on three sides, the peninsula, and then the city had thick walls. So it was almost impossible to attack. So Byzantine culture. The western half of the Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century. The eastern half, which was the Byzantine Empire, survived for another 1,000 years. So the Byzantines saw themselves continuing the Roman Empire. Like Rome, the Byzantine emperors continued to be all-powerful. They maintained an imperial system of government over a diverse population. Imperial meaning they controlled other lands outside of their immediate area. So because Constantinople was in the east, most of the merchants and other residents spoke Greek. And at first, since they're Romans, the official language remained Latin, but eventually it was replaced by Greek. So this is really the Byzantine Empire when it's at its largest. So really it's almost the old Roman Empire. But it'll grow, it'll shrink, it'll grow, it'll shrink. But this would be at its height. And here's Constantine. And here's a couple of his statues and busts. And then this is a mosaic of Constantine. So Byzantine culture, religion, and power. So religion, they become Eastern Orthodox. So they're united by this whole new form of Christianity, separate from Roman Catholic. So they separated from the Catholic Church. Orthodox Christians did not recognize the Pope as the head of their church. Instead, they had their own patriarch. In other words, this father figure that was in charge of the church. So Orthodox Christians decorated the churches with icons, which were images of Jesus and the saints. That's kind of where we get the word icon from. And their views on the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and then the shape of the cross is what is different between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. So power, the reasons why the Byzantine Empire survived as one of the most powerful economic and cultural military forces in Europe. Okay, it benefited from what was also in the East. So it benefited from this rich infusion of Greek, Roman, Christian, and Middle Eastern cultures. Location is at the crossroads. So it's a center of Europe and Asia, if you look at where Greece is. So Constantinople was the major center for trade for the whole known world at that time. Then they had a strong central government. Byzantine was ruled by a series of powerful emperors with a strong centralized administration and a single set of laws. Whoops, we got to go back. They also had a large army, so the Byzantine central government taxed merchants and peasants to support these large standing armies. So the Byzantine Accomplishments. Sophia, the Church of Sophia is this, you saw it earlier, this giant dome. It had tall spires. You'll see some more pictures of it. And their schools taught the ancient Greek texts. And they had classical images, which were called icons, and mosaics, pictures made with pieces of cut stone and glass. So these are actually made out of cut stone and glass. So the size of the Byzantine Empire varied over time. Under Justinian, it had reconquered much of the old Roman Empire, which I showed you in that map earlier. Then you have the Code of Justinian. Emperor Justinian collected all of the existing Roman laws, so the 12 tables, everything else, and then he organized them into this new single code of law called the Code of Justinian. And this code listed all the laws and opinions on each subject. So it required that all persons in the empire belong to the Eastern Orthodox Church. So if you lived in the Byzantine Empire, you needed to convert to Eastern Orthodox. All right, the decline of the Byzantine Empire. The late Byzantine Empire continued to battle Slavs, Avars, Persians, and then up from the south were Islamic groups that were coming in to invade. So in the 600s, Muslim Arabs took most of the empire's territory in the Middle East, so the Arabian area. Then the decline of the Byzantine Seljuk Turks. Okay, so the Huns, Turks, groups that came out of Central Asia defeated the Byzantine Empire in 1071 and took possession of most of Asia Minor, which is going to be the Turkish part down in here. Crusaders had to come into the city in 1204. And then the city-states of Italy actually began to compete with Constantinople for trade in the Mediterranean. So what happens is Italy and its merchants kind of take a lot of the money away from the Byzantine Empire and their trade. So Byzantine Empire still controlled the Balkan Peninsula, which is going to be the Greek area right here, and survived for another 400 years, and their empire eventually unraveled from continuous attacks from all different sides. And in 1453, Constantinople was finally conquered by the Ottoman Turks. So you can see all the different groups that were forcing down, and here's the Balkan Peninsula. This is Greece right in here. You can see all the different groups that are in Europe. Way too many to name. Influence on Russia. Russia was greatly influenced by the Byzantine Empire. Russia emerged as a state in the 19th century in the forest lands between the Baltic and Black Sea. What you had was Viking raiders came in and kind of reorganized the Slavic people that were living there, and they built this kingdom around the city of Kiev. Moscow and Novgorod developed to the north. Moscow ends up being the main city. And early Russian cities traded with the Byzantine Empire. So up from the south, the Byzantine Empire is going to trade with the Romans, and when they traded with the Romans, they give them a lot of the Russians, they're going to give them a lot of their ideas. So contact with the Byzantines affected Russia in many ways. It brought Orthodox Christianity into Russia, and then they got their alphabet from the Byzantines. So here's the Russian alphabet, here's the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the Byzantine Empire really just has a big effect on Russia. So the Byzantine culture spreads into Russia. Trade between the Byzantine Empire and the city of Kiev helped spread the Byzantine culture into Asia. Vladimir I, ruler of Kiev, converted the kingdom into Orthodox Christianity, so they get the religion from them. Russians started to adapt religious art, music, and architecture, so they copied the way the Eastern Orthodox Church had their churches. And then the legacy of the Byzantine Empire. They preserved the ancient cultures. Luckily for us, they preserved the Greek philosophy, Roman engineering that was all lost during the fall of Rome. And they copied ancient texts, and they saved all these things because really the West is completely destroyed by the barbarians and the different Germanic tribes. Code of Justinian. Emperor Justinian consolidated the Roman laws into a single legal code, and it greatly influenced later Western legal systems like ours. And then a new form of Christianity, Eastern Orthodox Church, started. So, and this should say, was led by the Patriarch and the Emperor of Constantinople rather than the Pope in Rome. So remember, that's a difference. They didn't follow the Pope that was in Rome. And then the arts, they gave us mosaics, painted icons, gold jewelry, silk, and then you have this beautiful temple, actually church. Now it's a mosque Sophia, and it's considered one of the world's most beautiful buildings. So you can see this is it today. You can see the Arabic writing because it is a mosque, but it has all of the Christian Eastern Orthodox paintings and things like that inside.